pro-life White House under attack.
Your administration is abortion obsessed.
Lawmakers grill Secretary of State Mike Pompeo about his proposals to help the unborn. We're on Capitol Hill. Heartbeat bill. We hear from a governor who signed one of the country's strictest proposals to protect the unborn. Labor of love. Why Pope Francis presented a medal to a Catholic nun. And a Mass for Mother. How Rome honored our network's foundress, Mother Angelica, on the anniversary of her death. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, March 27th, 2019. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Not afraid. That's what Mississippi Governor Phil Bryant says after signing one of the most restrictive abortion bills in the land. It bans most abortions after an unborn baby's heartbeat is detected, sometimes as soon as 6 weeks. Correspondent Jason Calvi joins us on Capitol Hill, where we caught up with the governor. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Lauren. Mississippi's heartbeat law goes into effect July 1st. Abortion groups like Planned Parenthood are threatening to sue. Those groups have fought heartbeat laws passed in 4 other states.
We feel very certain there'll be a lawsuit filed. That's fine. If we've got to fight over something, an unborn child is worth the struggle and the battle, and we intend to wage it.
A likely legal fight after Governor Phil Bryant last Thursday signed the heartbeat bill.
It is law.
But no applause from Planned Parenthood. Their president tweets, Mississippi's 6-week abortion ban is a dangerous policy that criminalizes a safe, standard medical procedure and will endanger women's lives. Governor Bryant tells News Nightly he's not worried about a costly court battle.
If you cannot invest money to protect an innocent life, what can we invest money for? Again, and look, I expect to have Planned Parenthood pay our legal fees. If we take this to the Supreme Court and win, then we will, I think, reflect the deep feelings of most Americans that abortion by selection and choice is not what they want. And so if it's endangering the mother's life, then that's a different thing. But we believe we're on firm legal ground.
But lower courts have ruled against similar bans in these states. This new Mississippi law bans most abortions as soon as the heartbeat can be heard, with an exception if the mother's life or bodily functions are at risk.
Scientists have, since the very beginning, have used the heartbeat as a determination of whether life exists. And so we are using that in the bill.
The governor says his state is leading the nation in the fight to protect unborn life.
There are a lot of people that believe Mississippi's the last of a lot of lists, and we're first at the list of protecting the innocent life. We want to make Mississippi the safest place in America for an unborn child.
And the state's bishops praise the law, saying it protects the tiniest and most vulnerable. But there's a different view in Tennessee. The bishops there say it's not prudent to support a similar bill. They say it's already been struck down in other states, and it'll lead to costly lawsuits, and then state money would go to pay legal fees for pro-abortion groups. Lauren?
Yeah, it's a very tricky situation. So tell me about the other states debating heartbeat bills.
Well, it's actually been introduced in several states. Georgia's Senate passed it last week. It's already passed the state house there in Georgia, but now some changes from the state Senate will have to go and be approved by the state house. In Ohio, the Senate passed it, and the House in Tennessee did as well. So, Lauren, we could see even more states having these signing ceremonies in the weeks to come.
Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi. Thank you, Jason. Also on Capitol Hill today, an attack by Democrats on the administration's pro-life policies. The target, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who testified one day after he announced an expansion of the pro-life Mexico City policy. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsby reports from the State Department. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. Lawmakers are also concerned about the administration's proposal to slash funding for the State Department and the U.S. Agency for International Development. The cuts to the State Department alone, 23%. But most of the concern today wasn't about the budget numbers as much as it was about the issue of abortion.
Your additional expansion of the global gag rule compromises our ability to support comprehensive, life-saving care to those most in need.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo facing criticism by Democrats for his support of cutting foreign aid to groups that advocate for abortion. Pompeo testified on Capitol Hill about the administration's budget proposal, one day after announcing an expansion to a pro-life measure called the Mexico City policy. The policy makes it clear that international non-governmental organizations cannot receive U.S. funds if they carry out abortions, counsel patients about the option of abortion or refer them to abortion, or advocate for the liberalization of abortion laws. Pompeo taking it one step further this week by cutting off funding for international groups that fund other groups lobbying for abortion. Pompeo defended the administration's policy today, which he says values the sanctity of human life. Democrat Lois Frankel hammering Pompeo and the administration.
I'm telling you, your administration is abortion obsessed. You're so obsessed with it that the side effects are devastating the health and are going to continue to devastate the health of women around the world.
There are not a single dollar reduction with respect to women's health care that is associated with the president's Mexico City policy and all the ways that we are implementing that.
Pompeo getting some positive feedback from several Republicans.
I'm glad that the Trump administration has made the commitment to expand upon this Reagan-era rule, and I thank you for your leadership in protecting the unborn.
Secretary Pompeo also fielding questions about a variety of topics during the hearing, from Russia to Venezuela to the conflict between Israel and Hamas. When asked about the proposed budget cut to the State Department's funding, Pompeo says difficult choices were made, but he says funding is enough to meet the president's foreign policy goals. Lauren?
Wyatt, I understand the Secretary of State received a question about getting aids to Christian groups in Iraq.
Yes, Representative Jeff Fortenberry of Nebraska talked with Pompeo about a bill he's proposing that would have the U.S. urge the Iraqi government, the central Iraqi government, as well as the Kurdish regional government in Iraq to do more to work with religious minorities like Christians in order to better protect them from a security standpoint, especially in their home in the Nineveh Plains. Pompeo says that the State Department does consider this a high priority. Lauren?
Correspondent Wyatt Goolsby reporting from the State Department. Thank you, Wyatt. In his confirmation hearing, Catholic University professor Bob Destro answered questions about the newly expanded Mexico City policy, as well as protections for people with same-sex attraction. President Trump appointed Destro to be an Assistant Secretary of State.
I'd like you to convince me, because the history does not match up with what I hear here today.
If you actually talk to the people who I've worked with, for whom I've advocated, you'll find that all of them, or at least most of them, would say that the charge that I'm anti-LGBT is laughable.
President Trump appointed Bob Destro in June to oversee the State Department's Bureau for Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor. Democrats criticized his past comments supporting the traditional definition of marriage. Senators debated the Green New Deal yesterday on Capitol Hill, yet no one, including 4 Democrats campaigning to be president, voted to advance the measure. The circles show the 4 senators running as Democrats to be president. They voted present. 4 other Democrats joined all 53 Republicans in voting no on the far-reaching plan. The Green New Deal is the Democrats' proposal to address climate change. A Southwest Airlines Boeing 737 MAX made a safe emergency landing yesterday in Orlando, Florida. The Federal Aviation Administration says the aircraft experienced an engine problem. No passengers were on board. The plane was being moved to an airport where the planes are being stored. And that Boeing model was grounded in the U.S. earlier this month following 2 deadly crashes, including in Ethiopia. Following those crashes, lawmakers are scrutinizing the relationship between Boeing and the federal government. In testimony before lawmakers today, the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration Inspector General Calvin Scoville, said FAA will significantly revamp its oversight of aircraft development, but Boeing says there's no need for an overhaul. The Diocese of Erie in Pennsylvania agreed to pay $2 million to a man who was sexually abused by a priest. David Polson was defrocked earlier this year among the accusations that he sexually abused boys and then made them go to confession. Paulson was sentenced last year to 2.5 to 14 years in prison after pleading guilty. Paulson is one of a handful of priests criminally charged as a result of the Pennsylvania grand jury investigation that detailed decades of abuse by 300 priests. The former bishop of the diocese in West Virginia is facing a new lawsuit. Bishop Michael Bransfield is accused of molesting adolescent and adult males. The filing also alleges he drunkenly, sexually assaulted and harassed seminarians. Bransfield resigned in September. The wife of Venezuela's opposition leader is becoming a major force in her husband's political campaign to take over the country. Today, she met with President Donald Trump and Vice President Mike Pence at the White House.
Hoy temo por la vida de mi esposo.
Fabiana Rosales says she fears for her husband's life. She's campaigned with Juan Guaido in his standoff against the country's socialist government. The 26-year-old also goes on international tours to rally support for her husband. UK Prime Minister Theresa May says she'll step down once the country has left the European Union. A Conservative Party lawmaker says May told her party she will not be in charge for the next phase. She did not give a date for her departure. The announcement comes as lawmakers debate multiple options for leaving the EU. And another Catholic priest has been kidnapped in Nigeria. According to a Vatican news agency, Father John Shekwolo was taken captive Monday from his home in the state of Kaduna in the northern part of the country. The diocese says it does not know who took him and is asking for prayers for his safety. Pope Francis will visit 3 African countries later this year. The Vatican announced the visits to Mozambique, Madagascar, and Mauritius. The Holy Father's trip is scheduled for September 4th through the 10th. Mozambique's president says the Pope's trip will be, quote, an inspiration and encouragement to build a united and peaceful nation. 3 years ago today, Mother Angelica, our foundress, died. An official marked her death anniversary today with a mass in the Vatican. Our Rome bureau chief, Alan Holdren, has more.
Lauren, Archbishop Georg Ganswein is personal secretary to Benedict XVI and the current head of the pontifical household. He presided at Mass today for Mother Angelica in the Vatican. It took place at a chapel dedicated to the German Catholic community. Ambassadors to the Holy See, church officials, journalists, and supporters of Mother Angelica's work attended. Archbishop Ganswein, who is German, recalled Mother Angelica's visionary genius, he called it, in founding EWTN as a tool to spread the gospel. In his homily, he also highlighted her courage in creating a media company independent from the bishops. The Archbishop addressed the sex abuse crisis head on. He encouraged the network to follow Mother's example in reporting crimes in the church fairly and fearlessly. He also said that the faithful must open their eyes to how criminals in the church have, quote, raped the church herself, leaving her a victim without protection. He concluded by saying that Catholic journalists shouldn't only report hard news, but are called to convey the core of all good news, which is the gospel. In Rome, Alan Holdren, EWTN News Nightly.
Coming up, analysis of the future of the Affordable Care Act. Utah's Republican governor signs a bill banning most abortions after 18 weeks. It's expected to take effect in May. Opponents say it's unconstitutional and promise to file a lawsuit. The ban is part of a long list of pro-life measures in the state, including a 72-hour waiting period. And in North Carolina, a federal judge strikes down a law banning abortions after 20 weeks, saying the measure is unconstitutional. Lawmakers have 60 days to amend abortion restrictions in that state or appeal the decision. The Justice Department this week declared the Affordable Care Act, commonly known as Obamacare, unconstitutional. And today, President Trump blasted the plan, saying the premiums are too high, people are going broke, and he is determined to fix it.
We're going to be the party of great health care, and the Democrats have let you down. They've really let you down. Obamacare doesn't work. It's too expensive.
Joining us now, Louis Brown, Executive Director of the Christ Medicus Foundation, a Catholic health care group offering Christians an alternative to traditional health insurance. Welcome to the program again.
Yes, thanks for having me.
And you just left HHS, where
I
you
did.
served your term, so we're glad to have you back now.
Happy to be back. Thank you.
Republicans' previous attempts to appeal the Affordable Care Act, or seen as the factor, widely seen as the factor for Republicans losing 40 seats.
Sure.
And Democrats taking in control. So is this a smart political move?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are going to see it politically different ways, but the reality is that the Affordable Care Act has contributed to increasing premiums and less choices for a lot of Americans. And I think folks want change. I mean, a lot of the country elected the president because they wanted a change on health care, and they are expecting that.
So the president said today, we're going to have a plan that is far better than Obamacare, but a plan was not announced. So how does the administration go about crafting a viable health care plan?
Sure. I think there's been a lot of Republican options, conservative options for health care to move away from the Affordable Care Act, maintain protections for folks with pre-existing conditions. So those need to be they need to take a fresh look. There was a bill that former Secretary Price had. Folks at the American Enterprise Institute did some great work. So there are plans out there. There's proposals out there. Those need to be put together. But I do think clearly the current system's not working. The alternative that the Democrats are proposing, I think, would be a real disaster.
If the Affordable Care Act is successfully struck down, what happens to the people who are currently receiving health care through that law?
Sure. It really depends if the individual mandate alone is struck down by the court or if the whole act's invalidated. Whatever happens, a replacement needs to be put in place. Something needs to be put out there to make sure that the folks don't have rug pulled out from under them. But the Democrats are proposing something that would essentially move long-term everyone into a government health care program. We know that that would expand abortion and really crush religious freedom. I don't think that's a good way to go.
I want to get to the Catholic perspective or the pro-life perspective. What would the impact be on the unborn and conscience rights issues if it was thrown out?
If it was thrown out, I think that we'd be able to make a fresh start. We know as Catholics the principle of solidarity, that we're supposed to be in solidarity with the poor, with those that are vulnerable, with those that are uninsured. That's very important. But at the same time, what the Affordable Care Act did was it empowered a massive expansion of abortion coverage in health insurance. And also it was used really as a weapon to attack religious freedom. Some folks are presenting a false choice. We can do all three. We can protect the human person, we can protect the unborn, and provide for choices that give insurance and medical care to the uninsured and to the impoverished. We can do all three, but we have to find a new way.
Sounds like you need to go back to HHS and get cracking. Okay, just kidding. Thank you so much, Louis Brown, Executive Director for the Christ Medicus Foundation.
Thank you, Lauren.
Up next, a Catholic journalist in England tells us why she was questioned by police over her misgendered tweets. And an award for a Catholic nun who helped deliver about 3,000 babies. A Catholic journalist and EWTN contributor in England was questioned by police earlier this month. She was accused of misgendering a transgender individual. Caroline Farrow wrote a series of tweets last year after appearing on a TV show with the individual's mother. In one, she wrote, quote, Susie Green may feel that giving her son off-label illegal medication, aged 11, and drastic surgery was the path of least harm in her circumstances, but she shouldn't project and impose it on other vulnerable kids as best practice. After being told earlier this month police wanted to see her, she wrote this: I have done nothing wrong, nothing illegal, and will happily do jail time for my right to say that people cannot change sex. Caroline joins me now by Skype from England. Caroline, welcome back to our broadcast.
Hello, Lauren.
Why did you write that?
Because I was feeling very incensed because Susie Green, the individual concerned, is a public, she's a public figure. She runs a charity, a lobby group for transgender children, and she advocates that there should be no mandatory age limit for sex reassignment surgery. And she says that if children as young as 9 or 10 want puberty blockers and then cross-sex hormones, they should be able to access them. So she advocates a why wait policy. And I felt, and in a lot of her advocacy, she uses the case of her child, who she took to Thailand for an operation which is actually illegal now, for sex reassignment surgery on their 16th birthday. And I thought, if you're going to use your child as advocacy for other children, actually, let's call out what's involved here.
All right, so the police get a load of this and they show up at your door? Is that what happened?
No, they rung me up and they said...
They rung you up, sorry. They called you and they said, hey, you're misgendering somebody. Is that a crime?
No, it's not. So they rang up and they said, we need to talk to you about some tweets that were sent in which you misgendered Susie Green's daughter. And I have a tweet cleaner on my account, which automatically deletes things after 2 weeks. So I had absolutely no idea what I had said, just that I'd misgendered. But no, misgendering isn't a crime. There's malicious communications, but it doesn't specifically mention misgendering.
So what do critics say when you cited your Catholic faith as the basis for your beliefs?
Well, of course, they said, well, being a Catholic doesn't entitle you to be a bigot. But the reason that I cited my Catholic faith, and of course, as Catholics, we know natural law teaches us, about male and female and that sex can't be changed. And everything in our faith militates against the idea of transgenderism. But the reason I cited it to the police was because beliefs are a protected characteristic under Articles 9 and 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights. So I wanted to say, look, it's my belief that sex cannot change, and that's protected by law too. And I was trying to, show the religious card, but actually, what I learned later is that all beliefs are protected under the European Convention on Human Rights. So I didn't need to pull the Catholic card, and I've been emphasising ever since that it isn't simply a Catholic belief. This is based...
You're allowed to talk the way you want to talk. Are you worried right now that you can't express your views, or do you feel comfortable after your research that you can say what you want to say?
No, I still have to be quite careful, I think. And a lot of people have pointed out to me that because I have now frustrated the transgender lobby, they are going to be after me and they're going to be looking at scrutinizing everything I say.
Well, they are already, aren't they? I mean, if you have to sweep your tweets, I would imagine you're getting a lot of harassment.
Absolutely, yes. But what I'm trying to do is, we know that the social media platforms, Twitter and Facebook, are being, arbitrarily deleting even the most inoffensive things. If you go onto Twitter and you inadvertently misgender, or you say men cannot turn into women, or you say anything that's deemed transphobic, they will delete your account. So I am being very, very scrupulous in terms of what I'm saying. But actually, I'm very lucky, Lauren, because I am a journalist and I've got contacts, I've got media contacts. I was able to push back on this and say, no, hang on a minute. And because of the outcry, Susie Green withdrew the charges, but she has also gone off after a number of other people who don't perhaps have the same backup that I have. She's gone after another mother of...
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So she's gone after private individuals who said exactly the same thing, who don't have the support. And it's terrifying. The police ring you up and they say, we want to talk to you. You need a lawyer. You are suspected of a crime here. We are going to charge you. Then it is very frightening. And so actually, I think people in the UK need to push back a little bit on this.
Freelance journalist and contributor for EWTN Great Britain. Thank you so much for joining us, Caroline Farrow.
Thank you.
Finally tonight, Pope Francis honors an Italian nun who has devoted her life to missionary work in Africa, delivering thousands of babies. The Holy Father presented Sister Maria Concetta with a special medal in recognition for her nearly 60 years as a midwife in Africa. And he said the medal was a sign of thanks and affection. Sister is 85 years old, and the life she has seen. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, thank you for watching. I'm Lauren Ashburn. We're going to end tonight with a look back at the life of another nun, Mother Angelica, as we remember 3 years since her passing. I wish I had known her, but her spirit lives in my heart and in our newsroom. Good night, and God bless you.